Another week brought to you by Gravy.
Gravy, the number one food staple of England.
What's the most notable gravy company? Is like Stovetop? Do they make gravy?
Heinz
HP?
Put ketchup in your
H&P?
gravy?
okay, Stanislav, we got to do the traditional opening where we talk about the differences between the US and the UK. So what is HP sauce exactly? Like Hewlett Packard?
It's called brown sauce.
Brown sauce. Yeah, okay, well, it's called brown. HP is brown sauce?
Yes.
Is it like steak sauce?
Well, it's made out of tomato, molasses, dates, apples, tamarind, spices, and vinegar.
Yeah, sounds like steak sauce.
Yeah, some call it Yorkshire relish.
Like a mix between steak sauce and barbecue?
Tell us about gravies, Stanislav.
They're everywhere. I was just telling Shane that, and Devon.
Not Devon.
No, I told Devon to close his ears. Devon earmuffs. British people, they just put gravy on everything. They don't use sauces. They use brown sauce, red sauce, which is ketchup, and gravy.
No, they call it red sauce.
They call it red sauce.
That's appalling.
I know. They also don't know what Grey Poupon is.
Do you put gravy on your cheeseburger?
No.
You put red sauce on it.
I suppose.
What about yellow sauce?
I prefer yellow
Green
sauce.
sauce?
Frankly, I probably would even take mayo over ketchup. I'm from Chicago, so like ketchup is kind of persona non grata where I'm from.
Oh
Hmm.
yeah, the Chicago dogs. You don't put ketchup on the Chicago dogs.
Well, we just kind of look down on ketchup in most regards, but French fry accompaniment is tolerable.
Oh yeah, it's delicious. It's perfect.
Okay, you're from Chicago, so we have to settle the debate. Is Chicago deep dish a pizza or a casserole?
It's a pizza. What is a casserole by definition?
We could look up the definition.
I like the long pause. Devon's like, I'm accusing this thing, but I don't have a definition to back this up.
Because here's the thing.
I didn't prepare my argument.
While I do believe that it is a pizza, I'm also in the camp of that, like, hot dogs, tacos, burgers, those are all sandwiches.
Okay.
Okay, I'm
make an
not
argument.
getting into this.
Open face sandwich.
Yeah, it's just
For what it's worth, a casserole is a kind of large, deep pan or bowl used for cooking a variety of dishes in the oven. It also is a category of foods cooked in such a vessel. So,
it
is cooked in a deep pan, so.
And I am Tanner, dropping the intro music here right now.
Hello and welcome to episode 251 of The Dive Down, a Magic the Gathering podcast focused on the latest decks, trends, and strategies for the casual spike. My name is Stanislav here in Chicago, and with me on the line. Wait, I'm not in Chicago.
You're not.
I'm not. I
The
was
notes
just
don't even
talking
say
about
Chicago.
It says here in
Did you open,
Manchester.
I wasn't reading the notes. I haven't read the notes in months.
Just wing it, baby.
I just wing it. Yeah, I'm in Manchester. Denver's in Chicago. I mean, Shane is in Denver.
Chicago.
I'll change my name to Denver.
Guys, I'm sorry. It's 9:30. I've had a really long weekend. I did watch Frozen 2 this weekend. That was nice.
How was it?
It was pretty good. A lot of lore. That's the lore
Oh, man.
movie.
Nothing I love more than Scandinavian ice lore.
That's what that is. And with us from somewhere in New England, his ISP keeps changing his location.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
It's Doomwake, aka Devon O'Donnell.
You know, I will say I tried to stream earlier this morning, didn't work, and then I was on the phone with my ISP for a good 30 minutes, and then I was able to stream for 5 hours today. So apparently, whatever they did, it fixed it.
So I was following the drama on Twitter because you put out a call for help, like, "Hello world, I'm Devon O'Donnell," and you were having trouble streaming. Was it just this week? Was it a sudden outage? What happened?
Yeah, it was just this week. So I looked into it a little bit more, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but ISPs can throttle upload speeds, and apparently it's more common than you would think. And where it's like, if you get to a certain data limit, yeah, they can just like basically, it's almost like a bartender cutting you off if you've had too many shots. Like they just cut you off. And while they don't openly explicitly state that they do that because it's like frowned upon, but they do kind of do it.
Now, before Shane asks the two questions, question the first: A, are you hardwired? And B,
Yes.
are you using the ISP provided router modem, or did you get your own third party ones?
No, I'm using the ISP provided one, which that may be causing issues too. Maybe I should look into getting a better modem.
I mean, that's not gonna skirt the whole upstream thing,
Probably not.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
That just skirts downstream?
It will allow you to maximize your available bits. It's not gonna avoid any kind of throttling your ISP is providing,
Sure.
unfortunately.
Right.
The question I was going to ask, though, really is why are we here this week? My understanding was that we had this week off,
That
yet here we are.
Yeah, Dave kept threatening that this weekend that this episode wasn't happening, but there were so many tournaments that we had to talk about the tournaments.
Yeah, I mean, we've got NRG this week. It is actually the final tournament of the NRG Series before the championship, I believe, next month.
Whoa.
So that is important for us to discuss because we have to see the fallout of all that and see who the at-large entries and also the final winner will be as well. So that'll be exciting. And we're not actually going to know that until the end of today, which is Sunday, because they have the side events. They have the Pioneer 5K, I believe, going today. All those points count towards the final standing. So we are not going to have a final update on those for you today, I don't think.
Yeah, and one thing that NRG posted, I believe they tweeted it yesterday, which there was so Steven Dykman has been crushing the event, basically this series all year, and he actually got passed in the Player of the Year race due to, I believe it was Kyle Gonzalez. I think Kyle Gonzalez top aided the event and they passed Steven, but then there was still the Pioneer 5K to go. So it's like, they basically just a sweat all the way into the last event, which is pretty sick.
Exciting.
That's what happened with Jesse Robkin last year too.
Yep.
Oh,
That's
really?
kind of cool that like every year the Energy Player of the Year race kind of comes down to the final tournament because it's so neck and neck with these competitors.
But that's going to be the final thing we talk about today is the NRG Modern event, I believe. But before that, I want to talk to you about heavy play. It's my turn. Actually, Devon. Devon, you want to talk to us about heavy play? Because you can even throw them your code. I'm going to give it to you this week, Devon.
Really?
Do it.
You sure about
Yeah,
that?
give them your code. Give them your code.
We'll do an ad read. So, for those of you who don't know, Heavy Play is a new card gaming accessory that'll improve your gameplay and your game day. The playmats, deck boxes, and card sleeves feature enhanced ergonomics, mobility, and protection, and they use this amazing Equip Mag system, which allows you to magnetically attach dice, bundle decks, and carry your playmat. You have to carry everything all in a single hand. And I gotta say, I did a little test run at my LGS the first week that I got them, and it was pretty sweet. And I had a couple of people ask me for the code and stuff. But yeah, my code is very simple. It's Doomwake with zeros, D00MWAKE for 10% off your first order.
There you go. If you didn't pick up the ridiculous Black Friday, Cyber Monday sale, you can make up for it now using Doom's code. Or, if you want to use our code, look for it. You'll find it. I'm not even going to say it. I'm going to give it all to Doomwake this week. He deserves it.
Wow.
What are we doing this week, Stan?
Well, on this week's show, we're breaking down 3 Pioneer tournaments. Somehow. We have the Canadian Regional Championship. We have Japan and Korea's Regional Championship combined. And we have the Latin American Regional Championship. 3 Pioneer tournaments in one weekend. Unbelievable. America's is coming up in 3 weeks?
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
December 15th.
So there may be implications for the final RC in the Western Hemisphere of the year. I guess it's probably the final RC in the world of the year.
I think it is.
Here's hoping.
Yeah. So there could be some implications from this weekend's results for our American competitors. And then we're going to wrap up with a breakdown of the NRG Modern 10K that took place on Saturday as well.
Sweet. We got some housekeeping, by the way.
We do.
We have a new patron. Oh no, I keep saying Patreon. That's such a weird noun. Patron DJ Rathiel. So DJ Rathiel,
Pump up the jams, DJ.
Spinning all the IDM hits. Some Square Pusher, some Audiker.
Rhythm is a dancer.
Bowery. We have no new reviews. I didn't see anything that came in on the old Spotify last week, but I do know that Dave, I think, has to approve those. And, he's been doing family stuff. He's not on Spotify looking at random comments. So we'll see what people got for us next week. Patreon. If you want to be like the DJ and help support us, we definitely appreciate it. It's the giving time of year. So why not give back to your favorite Magic the Gathering podcast, whether that's us or somebody else. but think about us. Patreon.com/thedivedown. If you want to get in the store, hopefully you took advantage of the Black Friday code that we had that ran through Cyber Monday. And if you did not, thedivedown.com/store, see what you might have missed out on. The prices are as fine as we can make them. We don't really have much margin on those, I will be honest with you. So if you want something, go and grab it. We appreciate it. If you want to use Mana Traders, the best online card rental service that I'm aware of, you can use code TheDiveDown23. That's numbers, TheDiveDown23. The reason I mention this is because that gets you 10% off your first 2 months. Barrister and Mann changed up the code because, those code finding things like honey pick up on them eventually. Mm-hmm. Good for us, bad for him. The Dive Down 23. 23 is in words, okay? The Dive Down 23. So spell out 23. You can do it.
Wow.
I believe in you.
Wow.
Yeah. And NRG Plus, our friends over at Nerd Rage Gaming, you get 8% off your order using code DIVE8. There we go. Some efficient housekeeping.
Thank you, Shane.
And I'm just going to keep going.
Do it.
Because I typed all this up. It's so odd to type something up and then just be like, does it make sense for me to read this? Or is Dan going to try to read my words in his voice?
You know what would be great is if we could just dump all the results into ChatGPT with the prompt, prepare a 75-minute podcast episode with room for banter.
Oh my gosh.
Based on these results.
You think we could try that?
Wait, I got an idea. We could just take the entire episode and put it into like one of the Twitch bot chat readers or whatever, because you like the text to speak things.
Yes.
Just have Brian read the whole episode.
It's even better. I think if we're doing like some 4-hour work week stuff, Stan, we just hire interns to do this work for us, and we say, hey, prepare an episode with our witty banter and in our voice. And then people quickly realize that we're easily replaceable.
Yeah.
They just do it themselves.
I don't think the guy in 4-Hour Workweek was hiring interns. I think he was hiring low wage labor from foreign countries.
Yeah, I think let's not discuss that particular model of economics because it is appalling to me. But Pioneer Regional Championships, we have Chile, Japan, somewhere in Canada. That's a big country. These 3 RCs give us a really substantial opportunity to look at how this meta shakeup, I'd say, after the Lost Caverns of Ixalan dropped, how that's impacting the format. Are people, really flocking to these Discover decks? Are they trying to tech against them? Are these decks actually performing? And we have a bunch of data now, and unfortunately for you all, we are going to talk about this data. We have that Atlanta RC in 3 weeks, like Stan mentioned, and so the results of these tournaments are almost certainly going to inform at least how people kind of begin their approach or continue their approach to deck selection, deck tuning, all that kind of good stuff. I mean, I will say, Devon, I want your take on this. 3 weeks, is that like an eternity or what?
Kind of, sort of, yeah. I mean, it's it definitely gives people a little bit of time to prepare and adjust based on what people are seeing and the trends, but I mean, there's also maybe we can talk about this later. There's also a ban window in that time frame, so that could potentially lead to something as well.
Yeah, that's a thing that I think we will need to talk about. Right? Is like we have that window is for the post-release ban, like the sort of emergency, big red button, wah, 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 get these cards out of here. So. I mean, I don't know when you can really fully commit to anything at this point. I do want to mention that we did use data from MTG Melee, or I guess it's just Melee, and MTGmeta.io. Meta, I think, does a little bit of data cleaning, which I truly appreciate. So, just know that these numbers might not perfectly align with any one data source, but they're going to be quite close. Just want to provide that caveat. I started with the Japan, Korea, East Asia Regional Championship, and they had 244 players over there. And this is an interesting meta. This is a big shift in terms of representation because we have Quintorius combo at 16%. Just flat out 16%. And then right behind it, the Discover combo, which I guess would include the Geological Appraiser combo. Yep. So those are the 2 decks. Quint combo, Geological Appraiser combo, made up about 28% of the room alone.
That's absurd.
That's a lot. That is a very quick, very fast shift over to those strategies.
In fairness, They are the hype decks. And I think until this weekend, I don't think we really knew quite how good or not good they were. So I think there was like good money on assuming they would be quite popular, just because I think people saw them break out last weekend and were really impressed with initial results. And
Yeah, the only event that we really had was that showcase, the Pioneer Showcase, where we had Quintorius in first place, Discover, Geological Appraiser in second place. But obviously, people want to talk about what decks won the event and what decks top eighted. But if you look at the rest of the top 32, there wasn't, at least to my knowledge, I don't think there was any of those Discover decks littered throughout any of the top 32. And yeah, you're right. It's like it's the breakout deck of the weekend. People wanted to see how good they were, if they were good at all. And yeah, kind of not surprising. I may be a little surprised to see Quint over Discover, just a little bit of a difference there. I think the Geological Appraiser version is better, but the Quint combo did actually win the showcase, so it kind of makes sense there.
For sure. Yeah, I don't really know how to approach this right now, meaning okay, there is a very small window of time. I've been preparing for our regional championship for hopefully weeks ahead of time, and then this new format comes, shakes things up, and 28% of the people in the room are just like, I guess this is the best deck. This is the thing that I need to be running right now. And that's mildly surprising to me. We'll see what the metagame in the other tournaments was like a little bit later, but definitely the elephant, the real, actual, literal elephant in the room of Quintorius. So, I got that one out of the way. After that, we've got Rakdos, kind of our traditional, decks. We've got things like Rakdos Midrange at 11, Boros Convoke at 9.5, Lotus Field Control. This is something that I was mildly surprised to see in this representation, really across all the tournaments that I looked at this weekend, was the Azorius Lotus Field, I believe it's just Azorius Lotus Field control deck, kind of making a pretty good comeback. We'll talk about its performance later. Is this something that people are playing more of in Pioneer lately, Devon? Or is this kind of like, this is the weekend when people were like, maybe we should be doing Lotus Field Control?
So the uptick in control is definitely a response to the Quintorius decks. Not just Quintorius, but the Discover combo decks, both Quintorius and Geological, because those decks are, the way that they are kind of presented in terms of game one, they're like all in on shoving on one Cascade card. Now, they're good at casting a second copy, but if you just have a counterspell for their Cascade card, then they just don't do anything. So because they're all in on resolving one specific card, I think just an uptick in control in general does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and they're frequently using resources as well, right? Like they're using a treasure token that they made. They might be only on 3 lands. They might have to get to another land or play another treasure making spell to get to even 4 again. So after Convoke at 9.4, Lotus Field Control at 4.9, Izzet Phoenix also at 4.9, Azorius Control at 4.5, and then we have Abzan Explorer at 4.1 and Abzan Greasefang also at 4.1. So, and then everything 3% or below, there's nothing in the 3s at all. We have 29% of the field is at 3% or lower. So yes, you heard me right. Things like Rakdos Sacrifice, Mono Green Devotion, Lotus Field Combo, Mono White Humans, they're all 3% or below at this regional championship. Lotus Field itself was at 1.23. So people are definitely not riding that particular Lotus Field shaped horse into the arena. I don't know, the rodeo.
Lotus Field shaped elephant.
There, Shane.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, me, I love a good metaphor, like Lotus Field shaped horses. I know that you all talked about kind of these big new decks last week. I did listen to the episode, weirdly. But I don't remember you all talking a lot about Quintorius combo versus kind of the Discover combo. So I wanted to outline that a little bit for myself and others, just to make sure I had I understood it correctly. This looks like a control ramp combo deck to me, and it focuses, of course, on Discover mechanic, and then all of the cards to make Discover work are sort of cheating the mana value of the interaction of Leyline Binding or Virtue of Persistence, which has an adventure, one in the black spell called Lochthwain Scorn. It does a -3/-3, also gains you life, kind of important in these decks, I imagine. Consign to Oblivion, the consign side is 1 in the blue bounce. Trumpeting Carnosaur is a 2 in a red discard, and it deals 3 damage to a creature or a planeswalker. And then you have like land tutors, like Beanstalk Giant, which has the 2 and a green, get a basic land put on the battlefield. Herd Migration is 1 and a green, discard, search for a basic land, put it into your hand, also gain 3 life. And then Greater Tanuki, which is a card I have seen in a lot of different numbers and a lot of different Discover decks, is 2 and a green, discard, search for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield tapped. And so that's your thing. You're interacting where you need, you're ramping when you can, and then you play Quintorius on 5 and you -3 to discover. And your options are Spark, Double, or Clever Impersonator. Copy Quintorius, -3 again. You do that over and over and over again as many times as you need, and Quintorius is static, deals 2 damage to the opponent each time because you're casting cards from exile. So there you go.
And one important thing to note about Spark Double is once you hit Spark Double, the wording on it says the name of Spark Double is not legendary, so you actually get to keep both copies of the Quintorius Planeswalker, and you get double X the static, and that keeps happening for more copies, because once you have the first double, your Impersonator can copy the double, which is also not legendary.
Yeah, because my question here was, is this infinite? Like, are you able to like recycle cards? Or you can do like 26, 30, like... How do you deal with if your opponent has a good amount of life, like they're playing Angels or something?
I think somebody did the math in my chat, and if you have all 6 clones in your deck and you hit Spark Double on the first one, I think they said it was 76 damage, but it's not infinite.
Yeah, not infinite. Okay, that's what I wanted to check. Discover combo, you talked about that last week. That's the whole make some treasures, get Geological Appraiser out early, do the whole Eldritch Evolution thing, Doomscar Titan them, attack them type thing. And then Abzan Explorer. This is a question I had for you, Devon. Is this an infinite life deck? It does not look like it. It looks just kind of like a life gain damage creature combo deck where you just can like tutor up what you need with like Cord, Coco, Return to the Rank, stuff like that.
So the combo itself is not infinite. So for those of you maybe listening that aren't aware of the combo, it is Amalia Benavides Aguares with Wild Growth Walker. So what happens is Amalia says whenever you gain life, I believe Amalia explores, and then Wild Growth Walker says when you explore, gain 3 life, put a counter on it. So those kind of bounce off each other. But what happens is Amalia has the text that says you explore, and then if its power is exactly 20, you blow up the board with everything but Amalia. So basically it's not infinite, but you keep exploring and gaining 3 life on each of those things until Amalia gets to 20 power, and then you just blow up the board. That's what the combo is. So like I played a little bit of the deck. The amount of life that you gain depends on how many lands you hit, because every time you hit a land, the Amalia doesn't get pumped, but you still gain the 3 life. So it kind of varies depending. But on average, when I did the combo, I went to like 75 or 80.
And it looked like there were some other cards in there now as well, like that just support exploring or support like pinging if you gain life or things like that, just to kind of whittle your opponent down a little bit more.
Yeah, a lot of these decks are playing a copy of Dina Soul Steeper, I believe is the name. It's black and a green for a 2/2. Whenever you gain life, opponent loses that much life. Or I think opponent loses 1 life or something. But
yeah,
basically,
I think that's right.
If you have that in play, then you just kill them because all the life that you gain and the combo just drains them. One card that I will say I've been very, very impressed with when playing this deck is Cenote Scout. This is like the perfect Cenote Scout deck, because we weren't sure if there was a deck that would want, like, if you think about it, Cenote Scout is basically a 1-mana 1.5, and there's just not a lot of decks that really want that, but this is kind of like the perfect deck for it.
Sweet. All right. Thanks for letting me repeat a few things from last week. We can talk about the performance now, because of course, everyone's probably out there like, well, if this is 28% of the room, what are we looking at here? We are looking at not amazing results for Quintorius in Japan. It was a 36.7% win rate deck.
Ooh,
not amazing.
Worse than Burn. Somehow.
Sometimes worse than Burn. Yeah, I'll go through the list, then we can kind of maybe we'll just talk about Quintorius towards the end after we talk about all these tournaments, I think. But Geological Combo was at 48.3, not terrible, not amazing, just under 50. Rack Mid at 54%, Boros Convoke at about 53.5. Azorius Control, 57.8. A nice return for Azorius Control here. Is it Phoenix at 57, Greasefang down to 40.7, Azorius Lotus Field, the controlling deck, is at 54.5, and the Amalia combo, the Abzan combo deck at 51.4. So most represented, worst performing across 196 matches. Again, our sample size here is not ridiculous, but it had losing matchups into every other major deck there. Its closest win rates were like 46.7 against Greasefang and Rakdos midrange. It did really poorly against Is a Phoenix. 15.4%, across 13 whole matchups, and Boros Convoke at 26% across 23 matchups. So those look like pretty weak areas. The Quintorius combo, of course, is really relying on ramping to get to 5 mana, right? And Boros Convoke is going to smash you before that, quite likely, unless you really get the interaction you need.
What is Phoenix doing in that matchup that makes him seem favored against Quintorius? Because I just kind of assume that like Phoenix would have a harder time dealing with a Planeswalker than it would a creature-based combo.
I agree.
Well, you would think that, but a lot of the Phoenix decks, at least the ones that I have seen, especially with Quintorius being such a big part of the metagame, are on 4 copies of Spike Field Hazard. Now, you might ask, how is Spike Field Hazard interrupting this one card combo?
Oh, minus
but
3.
Quintorius, when you minus it goes to 1 loyalty. So what happens is Quintorius goes off, they cast their clone, Quintorius is at 1 loyalty, you just Spike Field the Quintorius and stop their entire combo chain.
Cool. That's all it took.
And Phoenix plays a bunch of Spell Pierces too.
Yeah.
So much like the geological deck that, everyone saying, keep up interaction. It actually works.
It does. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Who
One
knew?
thing I will say about this metagame, just like it, if you told me that Quintorius and Geological were going to be 2 of the more played decks, like these numbers kind of make sense. I think Greasefang is pretty bad into it. We talked about the control decks being pretty good into it. And then one other thing that I want to mention, and I kind of said this, I said this on my stream before going into the weekend. I really do think that Geological is just like, I'm not going to say, I don't want to use the term strictly, but I do think it is the much better version of the combo because it's so much more explosive. It has the ability to kill on turn 3, and Quinn can't do that.
Yeah, and I definitely noticed some of the geological decks seeming to kind of create a hybrid version where they're changing up the interaction to be almost more like the Quintorius interaction, where they might have like leyline bindings instead of those like split cards and stuff like that. So we'll talk more about this later as we get into some of the top 8 decks and things like that. But yeah, I think that we have not seen the full evolution of the Discover strategy at all, I don't think yet, but we'll see where it goes. Like you said, the Geological Appraiser deck was like a 49% across 180 matches, did pretty well. It was doing pretty well against things like Convoke and Rakdos Midrange and Quintorius combo and Upzon Explore. But of course, like you said, the controlling strategies like Azorius Control, it only won like 22% of its matches. Lotus Field Control, like 35% of its matches. So definitely has opportunities to lose some games. And Azorius Control was actually the best performing deck in Japan. About a 58% win rate, squashed those new combo strategies, fared well against things like Boros Convoke as well. That's a good place to be. And other strong performers, like I mentioned, like Is a Phoenix at 57, Boros Convoke still did well. Azorius Lotus Field, Rakdos Midrange, all those like about 54%. So
yeah, it's funny. Typically in Pioneer, it's as far as the metagame is concerned, we've usually seen green as kind of this natural backstop to blue-white control, but green is so abysmal against these new combo decks that it basically have pushed green out entirely, and that means that's when it's a good time to play control.
Makes total sense. Yeah, this is a significant metagame shift, right?
Well, is it a combination of both green is non-existent to beat up on the control decks, and the control decks happen to be good against these combo strategies? So it's almost like a perfect storm, right?
Yes. Yep.
As soon as like these combo strategies disappear, maybe like in Quinn's case, maybe it's not good enough to keep up. Like we could see mono green have a little bit of a resurgence too.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, if there's something that is done about the metagame to like where people are adapting more and they keep the combo decks in check, then yeah, potentially green could come back.
Let's get in this top 8 really quick. We've got Motohiko Nakao on Geological Appraiser combo. This seems like a little bit tuned for the expected meta. Like there's a lot more interaction in the form of like Bedeck Bedazzle, Consign to Oblivion, Repudiate, Replicate in some numbers in the deck there just to give some ability to stop the opponents from doing kind of the same thing, I think. Interestingly here, I think that this deck can just sideboard into like a Dragon Lord Dramoka deck They have 3 in the sideboard. They have a single planes. I think they had another white source in addition to like the Mana Confluence and the Cavern of Souls in the main. Yeah, so why not just become a control deck, win with Dragonlord?
And their sideboard, I believe this was actually Yuki Ichikawa's list, and their sideboard had Sheffet Monitor, which is kind of a weird card to see in sideboard, but they just wanted another ramp spell because I think their plan in post-board games is just get the 10 mana and go, here's 6 mana, here's Dramoka, you can't counter it, okay, here's my Appraiser, you're dead.
Love it. Sounds like my kind of magic. Get to 10 mana. Not with 4
laughing,
lands.
but...
I mean, that makes sense. The second place, Kataro Chiku on Boros Convoke. Warden of the Inner Sky, just part of this deck now. I know that you were singing its praises last week. Still liking it?
Card's busted. Just best card in the deck by far. It's so good.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to play it because I'm like, when do you have the time to do this? But I guess you have the time to tap some stuff. Third place, Kenta Musakato on Jund Transmogrify. I don't get this deck. Like, I mean, I get it. It looks like just like token control, like make tokens control the opponent and then transmogrify the token into Atraxa. But like, why is this not playing Indomitable Creativity? Why is it only doing transmogrify? Is there something I don't know?
Mana concerns? I think you also get to play Giganta too. With Creativity, you can't play Giganta. I mean, think of it as just a mid-range deck, but your threat is just a 4 mana Atraxa, right? Like Atraxa is kind of like your Planeswalker of sorts.
Sure. I'll take it. Fourth place, Jinsung Wu on the Rona Luca combo stuff. What's your take on the Rona Luca? Why would you play this into this metagame right now? Or is it just like comfort level with Rona? Or
I mean, I haven't really played the Discover versus Rona matchup that much. The times that I did play against it, I think I played 1 or 2 matches. I think I lost both of them. It seemed a little tough because they were like able to present a fast combo while also having interaction for years because they have Helix. So, I mean, maybe it's not that bad.
I love not that bad. That's what I look for.
This Rona Luca combo deck, I'm looking at the deck list right now. It is Cocoa Bananas, and I feel like we haven't touched on it in a long time. But this is the one where it's got like, it's basically oops all combos, right? It has like a Luca combo in there in addition to a Rona combo, plus Karn for good measure.
It's a wild deck.
Moxamber deck, no less. It's playing like a bunch of legends, Bring to Light Valkyries in here. Like, it's just like, I'm going to put cardboard on the board and then I'm going to do like something absurd and crazy that wins me the game. I'm just not sure what it is at the start of the game yet.
I feel like I want to be playing this deck for some reason. I don't know why.
By the way, 83 cards.
Perfect.
Oh,
the one
68
I'm looking at
main.
from Japan.
Yeah, 68 main.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize that. Usually these decks play Yorion, so.
Fifth place, Takumi Matsura on Rack Mid. 2 Archfiend of the Dross main. There you go. Sixth place, Shoichi Hasagawa on Boros Convoke. Seventh place, Yuta Yokokawa on Azorius Lotus Field. I will note that they have 4 Get Lost main. As we kind of predicted, that goes right into these Azorius control decks. In Pioneer, Yuya Hasakawa on Azorius Control also has 4 Get Lost main. And Kenta Misakato on Jund Transmogrify takes the whole thing down over Yuya Hasakawa on Azorius Control. So Jund Transmogrify, getting the job done.
Yeah, funny enough, just a quick note, I think this was actually something very, very similar to what Gabe Nassif was playing. So pretty cool to see this list do well. Looks like a pretty clean list.
Was this Jund deck a known entity before the weekend? Because I kind of feel like I'm hearing about it for the first time from this tournament.
Kind of. I don't really see it that much in the leagues. I maybe played against it like once, maybe twice tops. But yeah, it's not really all over the place, but it's... Yeah, I mean, if you look at like the list specifically, it does have a decent number of stuff to combat the explore decks. Like 3 Torch the Tower is kind of a bit of a statement over Fatal Push, and because that one goes after both Quintorius and Geological Appraiser, whereas Fatal Push doesn't go after Quintorius. But yeah, looks like they tune their deck pretty well, and the 2 cards in the main looks like a pretty sweet list.
Sweet. Well, that is our Japan RC. And then we also have our South American RC complete. This is slightly smaller, 164 players, only 8 Swiss rounds here. And the metagame is completely different, or fairly different at least. We've got Azorius Control at 9.2, Rack Sack and Rack Mid at 8.6, Lotus Field Combo 7.4, Izzet Phoenix 6.8, Mono Green Devotion, remember that, 6.1, Abzan Greasefang, 5.5. Mono White Humans, remember them, 5.5. Discover combo, so the Geological Appraiser at 4.3, Boros Convoke at 4.3, Lotus Field Control at 4.3. Azorius Spirits. I've heard some rumors that these are good against these creature control combo decks. I do not know. That's at 3.1. Then Enigmatic Incarnation and Gruul Aggro also at 3.1. So a lot more decks at 3% or above, only 19.5% in kind of the other category. So a really flat metagame here. Many fewer pilots choosing to take the Discover combo decks on the flight. Only 1.2 were on the Quintorius combo, for instance. So 1.2 versus 16 in Japan.
Yeah.
So that's a really big delta.
Yeah, if you combine them both, you get to Discover 4.2, so you get to 5.4 versus 29%. So 4 times as much in Japan versus here. So yeah, very interesting to see, because I kind of would have expected, if you had asked me going in, I would probably have said that the combo decks would have been the most played in all 3 RCs. So it's a little bit of a surprise to see that the representation is so low in this event.
For sure. Interestingly, though, we do have a pretty big difference in our deck performance. Kind of overall, I think a pretty big difference in performance in that Discover combo here, while it only had 46 matches, was a 65% win rate deck. So that's pretty impressive. Even with that few amount of matches, mtgmeta.io kind of has the expected spread at above 50, has from 50.8 to 77.3. It's a huge gamut, because it's only 46 matches, but not a bad start for Discover combo here in South America. Mono Green Devotion was at 60%. I don't know how. You can say you don't know how, but then you look at the metagame and you're like, okay, well, they didn't really have to worry about the Discover combo stuff.
Yeah, I think part of Green doing so well is because Control was the most played deck.
Yeah, and then it usually does adequately against the Rakdos decks, right?
Yeah, that matchup is always super close.
There you go. So, yeah, I had a good window of opportunity here over down in South America. The Gruul Aggro decks did quite well at 57, Mono White Humans at 55.6, Lotus Field Control at 54, Racksack, Izzet Phoenix, Azorius Control, Rakdos Midrange, all kind of hovering, more or less about 50%. We go down to Lotus Field. The Lotus Field combo here was pretty poor as well, 44%. Boros Convoke, really poor here, 43.6%. Azorius Spirits did not do well, maybe because people were thinking that it would do well against the Discover decks that weren't there, and Greasefang at 40%.
Well, Spirits, as a occasional Spirits player, in a room full of Izzet Phoenix, that's a big problem. We love to pick on the Mono Green Devotion decks, but Phoenix is tough. Gruul Aggro can be quite tough as well.
Yeah, and then same thing for the Convoke side too. Again, because blue-white was just so overrepresented at this particular event, I've played a lot of Convoke against blue-white, and that matchup is kind of abysmal because they just have main deck lockdowns, and it's really, really hard to fight through that. So it doesn't surprise me that Convoke did pretty poorly here. And then Greasefang too kind of makes sense. I think Greasefang is a huge dog to the combo decks, huge dog to blue-white control. So it seems to, kind of, it all lines up with, once you look at the metagame, these win rates for the most part make sense. 65 is kind of alarming for Discover combo, but past that, I think everything else kind of makes sense.
What is Greasefang hoping to see, by the way? Because we've seen Greasefang do pretty poorly in the first 2 events. I'm just curious, what are you looking for? Mono green? What are you hoping to get?
I feel like it's trying to beat up on low to the ground aggro decks, right? By just going bigger than them and having this crazy turn 3.
Yeah, I think Greasefang is somewhat favored against Convoke. I would say it's slight favorite against Rakdos mid. Phoenix is kind of rough. Control's kind of rough. Sack is close. I would say maybe Greasefang is slightly ahead. But then you look at the rest, it's Lotus Field Control, terrible matchup. Mono Green Devotion, terrible matchup because they have Karn.
Oh, yeah.
Gruul Aggro, though, that's a matchup that Greasefang does kind of prey upon usually because their removal is Bone Crusher Giant. But yeah, it's bad against Discover, bad against Control, bad against Phoenix. And then it's once you get to that, it's what of the top decks, what are we actually beating?
Sounds bad.
I wonder if Greasefang just wants to be in a room where everyone's comboing off and it just has the strongest turn 3 every game, where in interactive matches where they can just their Greasefang gets countered or gets killed on sight. That's kind of a bad environment.
Well, the problem with it against Discover is even if Greasefang is in the play and they turn 3 Parhelion you, it's not lethal. And then your opponent's just okay, end step cycle a treasure, untap, play Appraiser, you're dead. you know.
Right.
So it's like
right.
against those combo decks specifically, that's not really where Greasefang wants to be.
Top 8 really quickly. We've got Gyote. That's just the name that they have on Melee Geological Appraiser combo. Julio Barano Espejo on Azorius Lotus Field. Benjamin Vera on Mono Green Devotion. Joaquin Fuentes on Mono White Humans. Facundo Conde on Rona Luca. Santiago Bagatti on the Obzon Explore deck. Christian Valenzuela on Azorius Control, and Marcelo Lopez Lagos on Wrecked Sack. And Gyote, the mono named person out there, takes it all down on the Appraiser combo. They took both the semis and the finals without a loss. They lost 5 games across 11 rounds, I noticed.
My
Not that
gosh.
bad. Not that bad. 5 games.
It's pretty good.
Seems okay.
Devon, hey Devon, how can I be more like that? What do I need to do?
Skill issue? Get pretty
Yeah,
good?
how do I improve my skills?
I wish they had the die roll, like who went first in all those.
You know what's pretty crazy about this Amalia combo deck? I don't know if you took a look at the list, but they have 4 copies of Return to the Ranks, which is something that I
saw
hadn't
that.
seen
I
yet.
thought that was standard. Is that not standard?
I haven't seen that yet. At
Makes
least
total
the
sense to
list
me.
that I've seen. Yeah, it seems really sweet because like what ends up happening is, so the way that the combo plays out is once your Amalia gets to 20 power, everything blows up. So what your
Yes.
opponent can do is just wait for the combo to happen and then kill your Amalia. But the
Yeah,
cool
seems
thing
bad.
about Return is you just get everything back and go. You basically just go again, which is kind of sweet.
Love it. Love doing things more than once. So, quick combined data discussion from these, because so these were complete, and MTG Meta has the data, and what MTG Meta lets you look at is multiple tournaments combined together. So I wanted to see if we got any cool data, because, you know, as we noticed, the metagame was pretty different, the win rates were pretty different across both of these, and I'll just start with performance overall, and both the control decks, Azorius Control and Lotus Field Control, were the standouts, although I guess I would also say Izzet Phoenix was a standout. Those were at about 56%, and Izzet Phoenix was like 55%. So pretty darn good in terms of, you know, doing what they intended to do, which was control the room and win some games. The Obzon Explorer deck did well, 54. Mono Green Devotion, 54, mostly from its performance in South America. Mono White Humans, Rack Mid, Boros Convoke, Discover Combo, even Creativity were all like, you know, 52, 53% decks. And then we get a pretty big drop off after Creativity in terms of our popular decks, where we go to like 45 for Racksack, 42.5 for Lotus Field Combo. You do not want to be playing Lotus Field Combo, I guess, right now. Greasefang at 40.7, and then Quintorius for across both events, 38%.
Ouch.
Does not seem like that is the breakout Discover deck to be playing right now, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, that does kind of make sense with, because I do also think that the geological version is significantly far ahead in kind of like the combo heads up, especially the versions that play Gearhulk's main, because you can just like, the mirror is so weird where both players just stare at each other. Neither player wants to commit, because if you commit and they have the answer, then they untap and kill you. So you're playing this like weird Drago thing. But if you have Opus and Gearhulk in your deck and you're playing Drago with your opponent and they don't have that setup, it's like, it feels so hard to lose.
Yeah, what's the intention for the Gearhulks? I've seen like it looks like 2 in those style of decks. Like what are you just doing with it? Just value, or is there a particular like line that you're looking for, like you mentioned with Magma Opus or something?
Mostly just Magma Opus, but you do have the Creative Outburst as well. So you have like 8 reasonable things that you can flashback, and both of those naturally go to the graveyard because they both cycle for treasures. So it just kind of gives you this like perfect setup where if your opponent's holding up mana, it's this like one thing where the Discover decks put your opponent in a spot where they have to hold up mana, because if they don't, they die. But then if they're holding up mana, you're just like, okay, I'm just not going to combo you. And then if you have an Opus in your graveyard and they're still holding up mana, not dying to the combo, you just slam a Gearhulk and you're just like, I'll dome you for 4, make 9 power. That's just going to kill you. And you have to answer this stuff. And then, oh, you answered it. Okay, now I'll kill you with my combo.
That's what I have from those two. The Canadian Championship still going on as we record, so we do not know the winner, but the winner doesn't really matter quite as much as the data we get from the rest of the tournament. 322 players, 13 rounds. That seems like a brutal number of rounds for that number of players. I don't think you need to have 13 rounds for 322. That's a grind. I feel like the this is held by face to face. And I
Yep.
think face to face like routinely does this, where like they just want to put their players through the full test so that they have to play as many rounds as possible to prove themselves in the arena.
Well, don't they have to with this many players? Like, isn't
I don't
that
think so. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna look this up.
Japan was 244 players, and they had what? How many rounds was Japan? 11?
No, they only have to do 9 rounds for recommended number of rounds in Swiss tournaments. I don't know why they do 13.
So many.
Maybe just for that. It's all that advertising dollars face to face. The Rakdos mid range. Okay, overall metagame. Rakdos mid range. It's Canada. They're gonna have the most up there.
it's a real misplaced ginger metagame?
Real
True.
misplaced ginger. Yeah, I mean the metagame is shaping around misplaced ginger. 11.2% of the meta. Is it Phoenix? 10.9. And then we have not a huge drop off. Then we go to stuff. I mean, this is all like stuff we know. Boros Convoke at 8. Geological Combo. I don't really know that very well. 7.45. Azorius Control, 6.8. Mono Green Devotion still here at about 5%. Azorius Lotus Field Control, 4.3. Lotus Field Combo at 4. Grease Fang at like 3.7. Raxac at 3.4. Quintorius at 3.4. And Boros Aggro. This is a different deck that I had not seen anywhere besides this Canadian metagame. A few of these were miscategorized as Boros Convoke, so I moved them. But Boros Aggro, it's like a Skrelv and red aggressive stuff.
It's the
and
Legends deck.
Embercleave. Yeah, looks like
And
a Legends
Moxhammer,
deck.
right?
That's a good question. I would assume so.
Yeah. So
Let's click on stuff.
this
We
was
talked about
actually Pascal Maynard that 5-0'd
Oh,
this
this
deck.
is the one you guys talked about last week.
we talked about this
Okay.
last week.
Yeah. Sweet. Yeah, a lot of people brought it to this. We did not see it in South America or Japan basically at all, but like 6 players in Canada were on this. So, this is the Inti deck. Yes, want to play, will play. It didn't do
Maybe-
particularly well though.
Maybe they brought it because it was good against Rakdos, and this is the misplaced ginger meta.
So, this is a more traditional seeming meta. We had about 11% combined on the Discover combo decks. But besides that, and the new Boros aggro deck, which is, effectively an aggro deck, right? Like it's not doing anything particularly novel. It's just like, I'm a very good aggro deck, hopefully. This is like what one might expect. So Canada, Japan, South America all had pretty substantially different metagames. The performance also was very different in Canada. The Geological Appraiser deck did do well, nearly 56%. Quintorius as well was also much worse, 43%. But Azorius Control and Azorius Lotus Field were not particularly special here. They both had like sub 50% win rates, unlike we saw in South America and Japan. But everything else was like very Pioneer-y, like very hovering around 50%.
So you know what kind of makes sense? It's weird how all of these metagames, these numbers look different, but when you look at the metagame snapshot, it kind of all adds up.
Yeah.
So Blue-White Control was so dominant in the other events because Geological Appraiser was basically everywhere. Like if you go to Japan, it was the 2 of the most played decks. And the reason I think Blue-White kind of fell off here is because Rakdos was the most played deck, and that's typically a predator for Azorius. So it's like the metagame, the numbers look weird, but if you look at it from a big picture, it does kind of make sense.
I mean, it sounds, and I might be getting ahead of ourselves, it sounds like you're talking about a normal metagame with decks with strengths and weaknesses.
I would never.
Where different representations and performances are based off of people metagaming and having skill in the matchups. I don't know, coming prepared or something. Skies might not be falling is what I'm getting at. So it's very, very, everything is hovering like, 47, 51, all that kind of good stuff. And nothing's really standing out to me, at least. We did get the top 8 because we're in the, I think, semis right now. We have Max Doré on Is It Phoenix. We have Jean-Philippe Goyer on the Geological Appraiser combo. I don't know if I like it more than just kind of like, hey, they're doing something a little bit novel. Jean-Philippe's deck is only using Leyline Binding for the spell-based interaction. There's like no Connive Concoct, there's no Bedeck Bedazzle, and there's a full 4 of the greater Tanuki creature, which is, the 4 green 6/5 trample. Shame that doesn't sound good, but you can channel it for 2 and a green. You discard it, you get a basic land, you put it onto the battlefield tapped and shuffle. So this is really saying, I want to always hit my 4th land. I'm never going to be stuck on 3.
Yeah, one thing about this list is I believe this is Pascal Maynard. I remember seeing him tweet about this earlier, and I think he said that there was 5 or 6 people playing this exact list, and their combined win rate was with the exact list like 76% or something ridiculous like that.
Holy moly.
So yeah, this list was popping off this weekend.
Yeah, it looks good to me. I mean, if you could play Leyline Binding, play Leyline Binding. You know what I'm saying? It's a known okay card. Ryan Primdahl on Izzet Phoenix in third. Larry Buzane on the Geological Appraiser combo as well in fourth. I actually maybe forgot to look. I think their list was more standard. I don't know if they're doing the Leyline Binding thing there either.
They didn't have binding.
Okay, that's what I thought. Ha Fam on Grixis Phoenix, which stretches into black for a bunch of stuff. Like they're playing Bitter Triumph, which is the spell that we thought would see some play. 1 in the black, destroy a creature or a planeswalker. You have to discard a card or lose 3 life to cast it. It's got Thoughtseize. It's got a couple Shieldred. It's got a Clean to Dust main. Seems like an interesting list. I like all those spells, I think. Edgar Magalhaes on Izzet Phoenix. Simon Carice on Izzet Phoenix. Kyle Gellert on Rack Mid. So we do have a couple of the Geological Appraiser decks. I mean, you would think that, being 7.5% of the meta. But we do, of course, only have 1 Rakdos mid-range. We have 3 Izzet Phoenix in the top 8. We've got a Grixis Phoenix, so that's a lot. Basically 4 Phoenix decks. So
Gotta ban Picklock Prankster.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, 5 Izzet Phoenix
5
decks.
Phoenix decks, yeah.
Yeah, I
One
counted
Grixis,
incorrectly. Yeah. Wowee. So we don't have any top 8 results, but like I said, not quite as important as the rest of the tournament anyway. And because MTG Meta doesn't have this in their data set yet, I could not add it to the earlier combined information. But there you go. I think it's pretty safe to say we have not figured out what's going on in Pioneer after this weekend. This weekend
Not
to
at
me gives me nothing. It does not say I would know what to pick for my RC.
I would probably discourage you from playing Quintorius combo.
Yeah, that seems pretty good. A good thing not to play.
Yeah, Quintorius combo seems bad. Greasefang seems bad, but like Discover and Boros and Phoenix, those 3 seem pretty good, and Azorius Control seem pretty good. Like I think if you're planning to play one of those 4 in Atlanta, you are probably on a pretty good footing.
Yeah, I mean, what's targeting something like Azorius Control right now, Devon? Like let's talk about what's up with Pioneer, right? Like, you know, is if let's say you can expect 10 to 15% of the room being on Discover, right? Let's just say that, like,
Sure.
and then you can say, you know, what is that doing to the meta? That seems like the biggest shift right now. And how are people going to prepare for that? And what does it make you want to do? Like, what's targeting something like Azorius Control right now? Like, if Azorius Control is also like, you know, or the Lotus Field Control is 15 to 20% of the metagame, what can you bring that hopefully can target both of those things? I've got no idea. This is what I'm asking you in a very weird way.
Well, I know this question is for Devon, and I'm going to pose a hypothesis, and
Please.
Devon would love to hear you confirm or reject it. But like Phoenix looks great in both being able to interact with Discover at instant speed and like outplay Supreme Verdicts, essentially.
Yeah, I will say there's one deck in Pioneer that I have not played a lot of, and it is Phoenix. That's the one deck that I don't have a ton of experience with, so I'm not 100% certain how specifically Phoenix versus Control goes. From what I've been told, I think Phoenix is a pretty sizable favorite game 1 because they don't have a lot of graveyard hate, but once you get to the sideboard and have to play around Rest in Peace, it gets a little tougher. So I don't know. I mean, I think that Phoenix is a very good deck. I think Phoenix is one of the better decks against Discover specifically because it has so many tools to fight the combo. But if I was choosing to pick a deck that was like trying to beat both Discover and Blue-White Control, I mean, it's really tough. I mean, I was thinking about playing Boros Convoke, and maybe you just have to like try to get them dead as quickly as possible. I know I talked about Convoke being bad against Blue-White because of temporary lockdown, but if you're on the play and you kill them on turn 3, well, that's how you beat lockdown, right?
What are your thoughts on Discover? And that's kind of, you know, the latest in a series of magazine issues I get, you know, my mailbox, you know, Magic Online Weekly, where people are freaking out about Discover. You know, they're saying like, oh, you know, you can win on turn 3. That seems bad. Even if you have to interact with it, you know, it's kind of warping the format. Is this something that's too warping? Is it something that's too good? Is it too annoying? Like, what's your take on this?
Tough to say because the way that I kind of look at it, I don't know if you guys were playing Pioneer back before Balustrade Spy and Undercity Informer got banned, but it kind of gives me a lot of Oops All Spells vibes because that very similar to this deck. That deck had 8 copies of a card that said if you cast this, you win the game, which Balustrade and Undercity did. And it kind of feels a little similar to that, but the one thing I will say is I think the Discover decks are a little weaker. There's more interaction that actually can like break up the Discover combo. Like we talked about Fiery Impulse on something as simple as a shock on Geological Appraiser can hit that, and you can also shock the Quintorius because it only has 1 loyalty. So stuff that deals 2 damage can be pretty good. As far as kind of its effect on the format as a whole, I'm not generally a big fan of if you tap out on turn 2 on the draw, you die. Like, I think that is kind of awful gameplay. And, so maybe for that reason alone, they could consider taking steps. One thing that I will mention here, the ban announcement, the window is December 4th. That's a week and a half before Atlanta. If I am preparing for Atlanta because I am going and participating, I am playing games right now under the assumption that they are not going to change anything because it is so close to Atlanta. Now, I could be wrong, and maybe they're looking at these numbers and they're like, we don't want this to happen in Atlanta, and maybe they have a different philosophy on it. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm assuming that nothing's going to change now, at least.
So how do you think people are going to approach this? So they're going to be like, okay, look, we really think Geological Appraiser is the truth of the Discover decks. Let's get these tuned and dialed in to fight against the mirror, to fight against the meta response, or is there not much that you can really do in terms of tuning it exactly how you need?
There's a couple of different ways you can go. Like we saw the list from Canada that had bindings and more ramp spells like Tanuki. There's lists that have, like I've been playing lists that have had 4 Torrential Gearhulk main because I think that is kind of the mirror breaker. So I've been more on like more Torrential Gearhulks, more of the ramp cyclers because there's one that really sucks that nobody plays, but it cycles for a treasure and you just want more of that effect. So like more of that stuff. But yeah, some have like Repudiate main deck. That card's good in the mirror. Some play like I said, more ramp spells, stuff like that. So there is a couple of different ways to approach this. And as of right now, again, things could change, but I think there's a pretty good chance I'm going to play Appraiser in Atlanta. And I'm going to be spending a lot of time just like tuning the list and figuring out what the best plan is, because you need a plan B, right? Because a lot of people are going to be prepared for the combo. So it's, you need to be able to kind of keep up with their, they're answering you. So you need to answer their answer, if that makes sense.
Can we rewind for just a second, Devon? You said something that frustrated me. It was not a direct.
Oh, it was a insult. Casualty of the words he said, not the actual Devon himself.
Well, it frustrated me in the way that Wizards of the Coast frustrates us so frequently in their format management. Your point that the ban window is like just a week or 2 before the RC in Atlanta. They're probably not going to take any action so close to Atlanta. What is the point of these ban windows then? You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
If they're not going to take action,
you got to find the perfect window where it's going to upset no one.
It's at this point, it's just like there is no good time. And now I'm not saying this because I feel like Discover Combo needs to be banned or anything, but the point of like now we're as Magic analysts have to like walk on these weird eggshells where we're trying to figure out like when is the right time to take action, like what is actually reasonable based on tournaments. Like there's no winning, it seems like. Not to mention Atlanta's the last RC. I'm sorry that we're kind of like an America centric podcast, I think, because we are all Americans, even though I live in England.
Oh, do you?
It's like I don't know that the whole world needs to cater to America's tournament schedule because Atlanta happens to be the last Pioneer RC of the season, 2 months after Europe, like almost a month after everyone else.
Yeah. I mean, I think I agree with you, Stan, right? Which is like, if it's bad, if it's warping, if it's unenjoyable, then, and it was a mistake, if this was not an intended designed thing, not every happy accident has to remain in the format. You know what I mean? So feel free to bounce, get rid of it, bounce it out of here. And I think the Explore combo did perfectly okay it might be an interesting addition to the format that offers up a different way to shift things up. I do know that people are getting kind of tired a little bit with where things were before this set, but I mean, I don't know. It's like, do you want it to shake up? Does it can only shake up in certain ways? Like, is it by adding a cool creature to a deck here and there, or entire new strategies have to be created? I don't know.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because, I talked a lot about the set going into it, and I was like, I was super hyped for the set. I was like, man, the set's going to be awesome. It's going to change Pioneer. And it certainly changed Pioneer, maybe not in the way that I had anticipated, because I don't remember talking about Appraiser or the dinosaur that much. But, I mean, the last thing I'll say on the ban window is I do kind of agree with you, but, like, at the end of the day, do you think, okay, so like people who got to play the RCs this weekend, they got to, get their Pro Tour qualification using like playing a certain format. And like, do you think it's fair to the competitors in Atlanta that it's like an entirely different format? Maybe that doesn't matter. Cause I guess the RC season in general is so weird because it's so spaced out. Like we had an RC like 2 months ago or something. So it's like, you're already kind of down that rabbit hole at this point anyways. So I don't know.
I'll just kind of stand by my initial question is like, what is the point of these ban windows if we can't use them because there happens to be a tournament coming up?
Sure. Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah. But I guess that's neither here nor there.
I mean, I think an important thing too is like all three of these tournaments happened with like extremely short windows before they happened at all with a new set dropping, right? So what's the real difference between a new set dropping that crack things wide open with a ban that maybe closes that crack a bit, super glues it a bit shut? And I don't think there's a really big difference with either of those, things happening. Like Stan said, I think it's easier for us to sort of, I'm not even going, right? Just be like, hey, don't mess with my preparation.
Yeah,
but, it's the same thing can happen for, South America, Canada, Japan. So,
I mean, these people, the people who participated in the ones this weekend, they got a bomb dropped on them, right? Like everything was going fine for Pioneer, and then it's like, oh, hey, here's this showcase where here's two brand new combo decks. All your testing is thrown out the window. So
totally. On some level, wouldn't it also make for a more interesting RC if they took action pretty close to it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of the opinion that they probably should take action. I'm basically like, I'm just not sure if they're willing to. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I'm not saying that they shouldn't ban something because it's so close to Atlanta. I just don't know if they're willing to. I don't know what their precedent is, But then it goes back to your point. It's like, what's the point of the ban list at that point? And I agree with that statement. I agree.
Well, we might learn that tomorrow. We're recording this on Sunday. I think tomorrow is Blake's stream where he's going to have someone from Wizards talking about ban philosophy. So by the time this podcast even comes out, people might have insights that we don't on like what is or isn't bannable in the eyes of Wizards kind of in a macro sense.
Is the announcement on Monday the 4th?
Yes.
Or like the potential announcement?
4th, yep.
Okay, cool. Well, what do y'all think? I think we tied a bow on Pioneer for now, which is very loose. I don't think we know a lot about what's going on. I think there's a lot of opportunity here and potential removal of opportunity if it's decided that this is maybe a little bit too broken, not really what was intended with the mechanic. But we do have some Modern to talk about in the NRG. Was this Wisconsin? Where was this? Madison. Oh, I love Madison. Let's take a quick little break, do a little ad bumper, and then when we come back, we can talk some Modern. So stay with us.
Shane, I'm sorry, I need to interrupt you for a second. Please be quiet. I need to speak about something very important. I need to talk to you about our sponsor, Barrister & Mann, and some of their newest fragrances that are available just in time for the holiday season. The first one that I'm most excited about is Midnight Special, a fragrance inspired by space westerns. We're talking Cowboy Bebop, Borderlands, The Mandalorian, even Trigun for the true heads. It's a stylish blend of sandalwood, Copaiba balsam, cypriol, nutmeg, Opapanax, Shane, it's got Opapanax, black peppercorn, and rasped wood. It's gloriously velvety and darkly mysterious. Perfect for a late night bounty with someone special. And maybe you prefer a more operatic sci-fi experience. Well, Barrister & Mann has you covered with a fragrance named after the the spice of Arrakis. It's melange. For the Dune fan in your life, melange is an interpretation of the most valuable substance in the universe, with notes of cinnamon, nutmeg, ginger, cardamom, bay musk, and, yes, desert air. Discover this intensely spicy, all-encompassing aroma with a sample at barristerandman.com. But all of these fragrances are available in shaving soaps, aftershave splash, aftershave balm, even the eau de toilette. And use promo code TheDiveDown23 with 23 spelled out in words now over at barristerandman.com to get 10% off your first order. See you in space, cowboys. NRG Madison Modern 10K, the last NRG event of the year in Madison, Wisconsin, home of the Madison Museum of Bathroom Tissue.
I was going to ask Stan. Madison, I feel like is a standard weekend getaway for Chicagoans. Have you been?
Yes.
You've been up to Madison a few times?
Yeah, I once remember. I think they were called MCQs, Mythic Championship
man.
qualifiers.
Oh, I remember those.
Yeah.
Yeah, I once played in one of those up in Madison. That was fun.
Never went up with you didn't go up to the town, stroll around with your wife or anything like that, or now wife.
Yes. Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Not just wives, ex-girlfriends. Oh. Yeah, no, Madison is it's like a 2, maybe 2.5 hour drive from Chicago. And it's cute. It's a cute little college town by the lake.
They weren't ex-girlfriends at the time, right? They were like your girlfriends.
Correct.
Okay,
yes.
I just wanted to double check.
Yes.
I didn't want any timeline questions from the audience.
I found Stan's dating history. But yes, we have results from the NRG Modern event. Now, as Shane noted, today on Sunday, they are holding a Pioneer 5K. We do not have those results just yet, so we're going to focus on the Modern tournament for now. 209 players, 8 rounds of Swiss. I was looking at the points and like the record that people needed to make top 8, and I saw some interesting habits there too.
Oh, very importantly, Stan, I have the NRG 10K thing open on Melee. Do you know who's on camera on stream right now? George Jabor.
Hey, friend of the show, George.
George Jabor on... No, George is commentating. He's not on camera. I didn't know George was commentating. Way to go, George. I messed this whole thing up.
That probably means he scrubbed out of the tournament. Sorry, George.
Sorry, bud.
Well, he is on camera, right? He's on stream.
Zoe Reederman and Ryan Hayes are on right now. Zoe's on Burroughs Convoke in Pioneer. Sweet. Cool. Anyway.
Cool.
Let's talk about Modern.
Yeah, let's talk about Modern. So in 8 rounds of Swiss with 209 players, I noticed that no one with a 6-2 record was able to make top 8.
Brutal.
Isn't that painful?
Damn.
You had to go 7-1?
You needed at least 19 points.
Oh, 6-1.
Though there were 2 people with 19 points who didn't make the cut due to breakers. And I'm just going to say, like, Casey Moon went 6-1-1, finished the Swiss in 8th place because their opponent match win percentage was 63.5, followed by Ryan Hayes, 9th place, same record, opponent match win percentage 62.5%. That's a 1% difference and didn't make the cut.
Ryan Hayes, like I mentioned, currently on camera at 5-1 in the Pioneer tournament. So Ryan's doing well for themselves.
Ryan's going to take a draw this round and knock himself out of top 8 again.
All right, so let's start with the overall field. According to MTG Melee data, I did no manual cleanup here for deck names, so we're going to do the best we can with what we have. Most popular deck. This may come as a surprise to you guys. Rakdos Scam.
Weird.
At least 30 copies, 14% of the meta of the field, with a 52.5% match win.
That sounds like Scam.
Yeah.
Most
Pretty
represented.
scammy win rate.
52 to 53% match win percent.
It almost feels like a lower win percentage than maybe what we're used to. A little bit.
I feel like, when we go over these things, like Scam's always just low 50s, but it's always low 50s. And, as I've mentioned ad nauseum, it's just like, we know that it just is so consistent across a lot of matchups. So it's like, just It's the tournament deck of tournament decks, and it continues to do so here.
Yep. Second most popular deck, not too far behind, was Teamer Rhinos, 24 copies, almost 11.5%, 47% match win.
It's not
percentage.
great.
I dug through a bunch of these lists just so I could see how many people were on the Tidebinder, and basically everyone was like on 2 to 3 Tidebinders. So this is Tidebinder Teamer Rhinos.
I want to play 4. I think that card's sick.
It looks fun.
Yeah, I played 4 at an RCQ yesterday. I didn't do well, which should, I'm not going to talk about my results, which is probably going to tell you how well I did. But it's interesting. It's obviously a really powerful card, but it's still, I think, hard to determine exactly where it's best and where it doesn't have enough range. I'm honestly on the fence on whether it's even good enough against Scam. On the one hand, after turn 3, stifling a trigger, it sounds pretty appealing, but it almost seems a little too late by then. So I don't know.
I will say I got 2 of my 4 of the borderless versions, and it is the wildest, normal, not secret lair magic card art I think ever purchased. It's something. It is so rad. It is so weird. I cannot wait to cast that thing in real life.
The third most popular deck, a pretty significant drop off here. 15 copies was 4-color Omnath, 7% of the field, 50, just about 57 match win percentage.
I will say the second place deck in the Swiss is also one of those. Did you already incorporate that?
Yes.
Okay. Got it. I just want to make sure the all other deck list, Isaac Bullwinkle tried to pull the wool over our eyes, did not succeed.
Fourth most popular was Amulet Titan, 13 copies, 6%, 45% win rate. Pretty low.
Yeesh.
Hard weekend for Amulet. I mean, Scam is likely a tough matchup. Rhinos is also kind of a tough matchup there, I think, because Tidebinder is fairly active against them by the time they're starting to do Amulet stuff, unless they have double Amulets on turn 2.
Yeah, Force of Vigor too. That's a big one in the sideboard.
Next, Burn, 12 copies, 6%, 49% match win.
Hey, this
Did you just say 49% for Burn?
This is like Burn winning a Pro Tour, basically.
Pretty much, yeah.
After that, Mono White Hammer, 10 copies, 5% of the field, 56% match wins. Okay, Rakdos Evoke is its own other thing here.
Oh, come on. No.
This is what happens when we don't clean up our data.
This is okay, so we got 39 Rakdos Scam, about 18 and a half, and probably about a 54% win rate then? So Stan was right. It did seem low.
Yes. There you go. All right, Golgari Yawgmoth, at least 9 copies. That's 4% of the field, but a 36% match win rate. That's bad.
I don't know what Yogg is doing in the format right now. I appreciate the Yogg truthers, but I just don't. I mean, I guess you're really leaning on the Soul Cauldron, but it just does not seem like the place to win right now, especially with because Tidebinder can shut down all those shenanigans, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it also isn't Yawgmoth just pretty terrible into the top 4 decks, bad into Scam, terrible into Rhinos, bad into Omnath, and I would assume not fast enough to beat Titans. So it's what is Yawgmoth even beating in this metagame?
Does not look like much, honestly, based on the numbers.
Yeah, right.
After Yawgmoth is Murktide with 7 copies, 3% of the field, 47% win rate. Not a strong showing for Murktide. Kind of where we probably expect it, to be honest.
Yeah, 48%. Murktide. It's just the opposite end of the curve of Scam most of the time, where it's Scam's 53, isn't Murktide's 47.
Mm-hmm. Here's a little bit of a surprise for me. Living End, 5 copies, at least 5 copies, 54% win rate.
Yeah, a little bit of comeback.
Yeah. Hardened Scales, also 5 copies, 60.5% win rate. I mean, that checks out. In a room full of scammers.
Yep.
Hardened Scales comes for lunch. Mono Green Tron, 4 copies, 38% win rate. That
also kind of checks out.
I like that the Excel reformatting here, Stanislav, says it tied 2,000 matches. That's my favorite.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
You don't know what people were doing between rounds.
True.
And then the last one on my list is Jund Sagavan, also 4 copies, 55-ish% win rate. Fairly good for Jund. Better than Murktide.
Yeah, that's good. I feel like
Wait, so the Green Tron player just played 2,000 times against the Jund Sagavan player? Is that what happened?
so that's what it looks like in this data. But I mean, I think like the Jund stuff, I feel like has maybe been a little bit slept on recently.
Yeah.
Like I feel like every time we talk about it, it's like a few people, and like it's doing like pretty darn well for itself. I have not come close to even testing this deck in the past year and a half, so I'm clueless.
I would imagine it's good against Scam, right? Just like grindy value deck that gets to play Saga, because Scam's going a little bit lower on Blood Moons these days.
Yeah, do not like seeing Urza Saga on the other side of the table.
I just feel like the problem with the Scam matchup, though, is Fury. Like a Scam Fury seems really good against them. Like it'll kill Goyf, it'll like kill sometimes Goyf and something else, whether it's Ragavan or whatever else they have. So hard to say. We don't have an MTG meta matrix for this one. I just looked to see if there was one, and there isn't yet. So that'll be interesting once it actually happens, if and when it happens. But let's look at the top 8 really quick, because there's some interesting stuff here. At the end of the Swiss, in first place was Ray Smith on Dimir Control.
I think I saw that there was one Dimir control deck at the whole tournament, and it was Ray.
Good conversion rate.
Cool. Yeah, 100%. Looking at Ray's list, I would actually say it's not really that fancy. It's playing 11 creatures, 2 Murktide, 2 Shieldred, 3 Subtlety, 4 Bowmasters. One of the most interesting includes, in my opinion, is just the one of Narset. Finds you cards, but also shuts off the Beanstalk decks. Probably pretty good. It mostly relies on counterspells for interaction, but does have 1 Damnation, 4 Push, and 2 Edicts. And, of course, 4 copies of the One Ring. There was an interesting sideboard include I wanted to ask about, which is 2 Cursed Totem, which is an artifact that reads activated abilities of creatures can't be activated. What is this for? What creatures are activating abilities?
It's for Yawgmoth and Scales.
Okay, then. Simple answer for a simple question.
I don't think it's good against much else, but it's definitely those 2 decks.
Yeah, and there was only 2 copies of it. Like, it's not the worst call. Like, if you're expecting a lot of Scam, you can maybe assume a bunch of people are going to bring Hardened Scales to try to fight that. So I respect it. Next up, Isaac Bullwinkle on 4-color Beanstalk. And this is not the Cascade deck. This is just the typical looking 4-color Omnath deck with Beans, 1 ring, Teferi, Renin 6, Solitudes, and Fury. It does have the 1 main deck Endurance, so you don't deck yourself. And then it's just doing Omnath stuff. Up next, Kyle Gonzalez on Amulet Titan. Very stock-looking deck list to me.
Yeah, does this have any of the new stuff people were thinking they would see? I do not see Spelunking.
No Spelunkers?
Not in this version.
Oh.
Spelunking, as Dave would say.
Yeah. I just wonder, what do they cut? He's playing 1 Cultivator Colossus, 1 Expedition map. I don't know, like, Spelunking probably isn't better than the One Ring.
I think they were shaving on Azusa, if I recall correctly. Like, trimming down to 1 Azusa and then trimming, maybe a land, maybe a copy of Greaser. I can't remember exactly, but just 2 copies, I think, is what I've been seeing.
Yeah. All right, up next, Theo Jung on Rhinos. I mean, fairly stock, I think, for what we expect from Teamer Rhinos these days. 3 Tidebinders in the main to make room for 1 Fury. No Brazen Borrower, which took me a little bit by surprise, but people in our Discord were saying that, like, Borrower is not great now. I'm starting to think that that's probably true. Tidebinder seems to, like, deal with whatever Borrower wants to bounce in terms of, like, problematic permanence, and then you have Dead Gone to actually do bouncing of creatures if you want to, like, get through with Rhino damage or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the only situation that I could see coming up is, like, if you have Chalice, or if they have Chalice, and you're like, normally you would just borrow the Chalice in a turn, but you have to wait till you get to 6 mana so you can go Cascade Spell, and then Tishana's Tidebinder the Chalice trigger, so it's like, could be kind of awkward there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Though Tidebinder, I would say, makes the turn 1 suspend much better, since you can now, like, save a Force of Negation or a Tidebinder for whatever it is they're trying to do to mess with you. But one thing I want to call out from Theo's sideboard is 2 Magus of the Moon, but no Blood Moons. I hear people saying things like Blood Moon isn't so great against Tron anymore because they have the One Ring and Small Karn. Are we only Blood Mooning Amulet Titan decks now.
I mean, I don't think that the Omnath decks still want to see a Blood Moon, do they?
Probably not,
I don't
but
know. Yeah, I mean, I did notice that Jessie Robkin was also playing Teamer Rhinos. She had no Blood Moon effects in her 75, just 2 Obsidian Charma on the side.
yeah.
I think as far as Magus versus Blood Moon, there are 3 copies of Flame of Venor in Theo 75, and Magus being a wizard for Flame might lead you more towards Magus over Blood Moon.
That's interesting.
Mm.
I can dig it. But then you just like can't play that against the Beans decks because they'll
Correct.
Solitude it or Fury it, and
it's
it's
terrible
over.
against Beans.
And I think even like Tron is bringing in Dismembers to deal with Rhino, so they're probably just gonna kill the Magus too. So maybe you're not trying to interact with those decks with Blood Moon effects right now. All right, up next, A. Adams on Scam. Pretty stock deck. Only 1 Molten Collapse in the main, 1 more in the side, followed by Fletcher Johnson, also on Scam. Nearly identical to A. Adams' deck. And then our last 2 decks are Casey Moon and Dave the Dinosaur. Their name on MTG Melee is just Dave with a little dinosaur emoji. And both of them were on mono black coffers. Exactly what you'd expect out of mono black coffers. It's Karn, Shieldred, Bowmaster, the One Ring, and black cards. The one addition I do want to call out in Casey's deck is 2 copies of Sunken Citadel, which is a new cave from Lost Caverns, and it enters the battlefield tapped. As it enters, you choose a color, and it taps to add 1 mana of the chosen color, but it has this extra ability, which is pretty interesting, which is tap to add 2 mana of the chosen color, spend this only to activate abilities of land sources, which you use to tap your Cabal coffers with just the 1 Sunken Citadel instead of 2 swamps or whatever you have out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I played almost this exact list. I think I played like 1 or 2 cards different, trying out the Sunken Citadel, and I was very, very impressed with it. Not only does it allow you to activate coffers, so you get like a little bit of a boost of mana, but if you go turn 1 Citadel, you can actually activate Field of Ruin on turn 2, which gives you ways to beat Tron on the draw that you wouldn't have before.
Devon, as a 4 Shieldred owner now, is there any reason I shouldn't just be playing this deck? Besides I have to like buy 4 Cabal coffers?
I mean, I do think it's a very, very good deck. I
love Karn. I love Karn boards.
Yeah, no, I've been like waffling between coffers and rhinos for my next or last RCQ. I think it's my last one. Yeah, I don't know. I like the coffers deck. Not sure which one I want to play, but they're both pretty good.
Yeah, Shane, I think you should give it a go. It had a 60% win rate.
Ooh,
at least 3 copies, maybe only 3, but even so, like, I think the deck is good and somewhat underplayed.
I mean, if I can play a Karn board, I'm happy. Was that the whole top 8 stand? You got through both of those mono black decks, or?
Yeah, that was the whole top 8.
Did you notice that there were 5 ring decks in the top 8?
Yes. I did notice this.
The One Ring, known OK modern Magic card. But you said what? Fletcher Johnson won on the scam, right?
Correct. Fletcher won. So I actually can't tell who they played in the finals. We know the top 4 bracket, so they either played against coffers or rhinos. But NRG or MTG Melee doesn't have the finals or the semifinals data. It just has the top 8, and then NRG tweets told us who the winner was. I do want to point out one honorable mention if we're done talking about like top 8 in the broader metagame.
Oh yeah, let's go.
Jordan Litsky's 10th place deck, 5 color control.
What am I looking at?
I just want to read some. Can I just share some highlights from this deck? 19 creatures, including Orcish Bowmaster in Solitude, Elish Norn, okay, fine, Ranger Captain of Eos, Martyr of Sands, Eagles of the North, Thraben Inspector, Giant Killer, Haywire Might. These are cards.
Legal modern cards.
Legal modern cards. They are also playing 4 copies of the One Ring and Leyline Binding, as well as 3 Supreme Verdicts and Prismatic Endings. So, like, we have a control package, we have Teferi Time Revelers, and the weirdest assortment of white creatures.
Yeah, these numbers are so strange. It's like 2 Ranger Captain, 2 Martyr, 1 Thraben Inspector. It's like so weird.
So I guess all that Ranger Captain can actually fetch is Martyr Sands, Haywire Mite, Thraben Inspector, and Giant Killer.
Yeah.
So it's like a toolbox of
Right.
like, do you need to gain some life? Do you need to answer a One Ring or some other problematic artifact? Do you need to kill something with the Chop Down adventure on Giant Killer? So I guess like that's kind of an interesting little techie package, but this person did fairly well. I mean, I think they went 6-2. Or no, I think they went 6-1-1.
No, I think they were X1-1. They got bubbled out, yeah.
Yeah.
Their breakers were pretty awful.
So there you go.
Sweet. I'm looking at the leaderboard right now, and we have it's updated from yesterday. So all of the non-at-large finishers are locked in. Raja Suleiman from last year's winner. We got the showdown winners of Stephen Dickman, Daniel Weiser, Matthew Hoey, Kyle Gonzalez, Jonathan Hobbs, Fletcher Johnson. And then the team people were Eric Bugart, Bergart, Matthew Weiss, and Grayson Nemitz. So we have the 6 at-large finishers right now. And I think a few of them are locked up. I think a few of them maybe have a chance of losing. And that would be, we have Theo Young at 108 points. I think they're pretty much set to be one of the 6 at-large competitors. Will Kowalczyk at 100 points. Ben Ungar at 97. And then I think maybe things get a little, these are kind of maybe the more open ones. Chris Smith at 90, Derek Davis at 84, Ryan Hayes at 81. Ryan Hayes, that's the person who was 5-1 just when we were starting this conversation, right? So I think Ryan also is probably going to lock up one of those 6 spots with this Pioneer finish they have. Cliff Boyardee at 75, Sarah Shearing at 66, A. Adams at 66. We got a bunch of, and then a couple other people I think within maybe shouting distance, Kat Granger Miller Granger, and Travis Williams at 64 and 63 points. So I think those, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe the people in the 60s have a shot, depending on just who's at this event and how they're performing. So we'll know more when the final people that are being at the NRG Series Championship show up. Are you commentating that, Devon, or is it kind of conflicting with other plans you have?
I don't know if they've sent out invites or if they've like determined who is going to be commentating it, so I am not sure as of right now.
Here's hoping we hear you.
Would you like to do it?
Yeah, for sure. If they asked me, I definitely would. I took this weekend off because I thought I was going to be going on a longer vacation for Thanksgiving, but it turned out that I wasn't gone as long. So, and I ended up feeling sick yesterday anyway, so I probably would have taken the day off. But
Word. Stanislav, I think we've learned nothing new about Modern, but besides that, I still like all these decks, every one of them.
Yeah. Modern is interesting. I'll be sad for the Modern RCQ season to go. I don't know when we'll get to care about Modern again because Standard is the next RCQ season.
we get to become a Standard podcast.
I'm gonna push for this. I don't think Shane knows that I'm gonna push for this, but I'm going to push for this. Some Standard coverage at least. What's another episode on another format between friends?
I'm going to be playing a lot of Standard, so.
Shane is looking right at the camera, like he's trying to peer into my room.
I was looking at your face on my screen, right? And I was doing kind of like this half-lidded, nonplussed look, and then I was realizing that it didn't have the same effect as if I was actually looking at the camera. And it could be for Devon, could be for Stan, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to worry about that until next year, really, but why not?
I mean, Lord knows I need more reason to play Magic. So,
well, good thing you have this Mana Trader subscription. You can play any deck in any format.
Good point. If I can get a pairing on Magic Online for Standard, we'll see.
Fair point. All right, well, that wraps up this week's show. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to our podcast so you get the latest episodes as soon as they come out. And if you use Apple Podcasts, please leave us a rating and review. If you'd like to submit a question to the podcast or just reach out in general, you can tweet us at The Dive Down, all one word, or email thedivedown@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the show, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/thedivedown and check out our store at thedivedown.com/store. Head over to heavyplay.com to get some incredible deck and dice boxes and playmats featuring the Equip Mag system. Use Devon's promo code DOOMWAKE. That's DOOMWAKE to get 10% off your first order at Heavy Play. And shout out to Mana Traders for sponsoring the Dive Down. If you sign up for Mana Traders using promo code TheDiveDown23, all one word, you'll get 10% off your first 2 months of renting Magic Online cards. Also get some amazing shaving soaps, body soaps, fragrances, and more at Barrister & Mann using promo code TheDiveDown23. Now, 23 is spelled out here. We're trusting you to spell it correctly, but that gets you 15% off your first order at Barrister & Mann. And save money on paper cards over at Nerdridge with code DIVE8 for 8% off your order at NRG. As always, special thanks to the bands Nowhere and Spaceblood for letting us use their music. And until next week, get out there and visit Madison's Museum of Bathroom Tissue!